My name is Emily. One Christmas, my mother handed out gifts to everyone at the table and deliberately skipped me, saying I hadn't earned one. 2 weeks later, the same people were begging me to save their company. If you've ever been cut out by family, share your story in the comments. I arrived late, straight from the airport, coat still on, laptop tucked under my arm, the smell of ham already heavy in the house. Plates clinked. Someone asked if traffic was bad. Before I could answer, my mother stood and started handing out gifts. She moved down the table methodically. My brother got a watch. His wife got a scarf. The kids tore into boxes with practiced enthusiasm. When she reached my place, she stopped. "This year, I didn't get you anything. You haven't earned it." The sentence landed cleanly, like it had been rehearsed. No one spoke. A cousin laughed too loudly and said something about pie. Forks moved again. My mother kept going, smiling as she passed another wrapped box across the table. This wasn't a flare-up. It was routine, the kind of moment that pretends to be reasonable if nobody questions it. A glass was empty near my plate. I stood, filled it from the sink, and said, "It's fine." The word worked the way duct tape does. Not pretty, but effective. Back at the table, a manila envelope caught my eye. It sat beside the gravy boat, stamped with the logo of a firm I hadn't worked with in over a year. Family dinners never came with bank paperwork. I slid my chair in without touching it. Across from me, my mother talked about a new contract, how it was definitely getting signed before the new year. She said it casually, the way people state the weather. Deadlines had already been pushed. Everyone nodded anyway. In the living room, the security monitor stayed dark. Someone mentioned it earlier, blaming a glitch. It stayed that way while presents changed hands. Dessert arrived. Laughter followed. The whole thing moved on faster than I expected. There was a strange relief in not having to thank anyone for something I didn't want. My phone buzzed against my leg. An automated message from my investment platform lit the screen. Partner status updated. The timing felt wrong, or maybe too neat. I didn't open it. Voices rose behind me, overlapping, cheerful. A chair scraped. My mother turned. "Emily," she said, tapping the table once. "Come sit. Don't be dramatic." Someone poured more wine. My brother asked about my flight, eyes fixed on the table. Laughter kept circling, thin but persistent. My mother lifted her glass, already talking again. Everyone acting like nothing had happened yet and waiting for me to prove it wouldn't slow dinner down for anyone else. The days after Christmas filled themselves without asking. Group chats lit up with photos I wasn't in. Calls came through, not to check on me, but to smooth things over. My mother's version traveled fast. I was busy. I was distant. I cared more about work than family. Nobody asked me directly. They didn't need to. At the office, the tone shifted before anyone said it out loud. A meeting invite appeared on my calendar marked urgent. The big contract was paused, according to the partner. Not canceled, not saved, just hanging there, expensive and fragile. People avoided my eyes as they took their seats. The room felt smaller once everyone realized who wasn't being asked to speak. One of the senior managers cleared his throat and said they'd handle things internally for now. A follow-up email landed minutes later, polite and clinical, asking me to temporarily refrain from participating in financial decisions related to the deal. No accusation, no explanation, just distance, formalized. A quick message to an old contact confirmed what I already suspected. The deadline had been pushed again. There was nothing definite about it. The reassurance at the dinner table had been for show. Knowing that didn't help. It just made the silence louder. By midweek, the text started. An aunt suggested I apologize to keep the peace. A cousin reminded me how much stress my mother was under. Someone else said family was more important than pride. None of them mentioned the contract. None of them asked what actually happened. The bank email came in around the same time. They needed additional guarantees within 72 hours. The countdown was printed right there, friendly and firm. Marcus met me at a coffee shop near the office, the kind with uncomfortable chairs that discourage lingering. He listened without interrupting while I laid out the sequence. When I finished, he stirred his drink and looked past me at the window. If you're innocent, stop explaining. Start collecting. There was no comfort in it, which helped. He pointed out what I'd missed, what mattered, what didn't. The volume of a story, he said, had nothing to do with its accuracy. Families believe the loudest person, he added, not the one who reads the contract. It almost made me smile. Back at work, the air stayed polite and cool. People asked about my flight from before the holidays, about nothing important. Nobody mentioned the envelope, or the pause, or the bank. The absence of those words did more damage than an argument would have. Another message came in from my mother that evening, framed as concern. She hoped I was okay. She worried I'd misunderstood things. She wanted everyone to move forward together. The word together did a lot of work there. By Friday, the pressure stacked neatly. Bank deadline, family dinner invitation, office uncertainty. All of it arranged like it had been coordinated, though nobody would ever admit that. The email from my mother arrived just before sunset. Subject line, family meeting. The agenda attached looked professional enough to pass for a board meeting. Financial updates, roles, expectations. It was scheduled for the weekend, right when the bank clock ran out. I opened my calendar and watched the overlap settle into place. The cursor hovered while notifications piled up. Another message buzzed from a relative asking if I'd respond soon. The coffee from earlier sat untouched on my desk, cold now. Marcus sent a final note before heading offline. No advice this time, just a thumbs-up emoji and a screenshot of a file name I didn't recognize yet. The search started with a folder I hadn't opened in years. Old tax documents, scanned IDs, routine forms that never mattered enough to remember. The kind of paperwork that builds up when someone else insists on handling things. Buried between receipts was a scanned financial power of attorney with my name typed neatly at the bottom. The signature was mine. The date made my stomach drop. It matched the afternoon my mother stopped by my apartment waving a stack of forms and asking me to sign quickly because the accountant was waiting. I remembered standing by the counter, pen in hand, listening to her talk about deductions and deadlines. I hadn't read past the first page. Messages from that week lined up next, texts I'd ignored until now, suddenly sharp around the edges. Did you change your banking password? Just checking, still using the same email, right? Your account manager's name again? They'd felt harmless, familiar, the way concern always sounds when it knows you won't question it. The call with my mother stayed short. Her voice didn't shake. So you used my signature, I said. She exhaled like this was tedious. I did what I had to do for the family. No denial, no apology, just justification delivered evenly. A cousin called an hour later, already informed. Don't make this bigger than it is, he said. You know how she gets. The phrase landed wrong, like weather, like something unavoidable. An email followed from her lawyer, formal and brief, confirming representation. The timing was clean enough to admire. Without waiting, a request went out to freeze one of the accounts tied to the paused contract. The decision wasn't strategic. It was reaction, driven by the sense that if something didn't move soon, everything would be decided without me. The system responded instantly. Thank you for your patience. It felt like a joke written by someone who'd never needed it. By evening, the consequences arrived. The family company's attorney sent a notice accusing me of interfering with business operations. The language was stiff and practiced, designed to sound neutral while drawing blood. Another text buzzed in, then another. Different relatives, same message. This was getting out of hand. This was unnecessary. This was hurting people. No one asked if the document was real. The screen filled with alerts. Calendar reminders, deadlines stacking up. The power of attorney sat open in another window, my signature staring back at me, calm and legible. A message from Marcus came through, a single line. That's your leverage. Don't waste it. The legal notice refreshed. The accusation stayed. My name sat in the middle of it, clean and official, framed by language that assumed intent. The phone rang again. I let it go. The email from the company lawyer remained open, cursor blinking at the end of the paragraph as if waiting for a response. Outside, traffic moved on schedule. Inside, everything slowed. Another automated reply landed, confirming receipt of my earlier request. Thank you for your patience. The words followed me as the notification faded, replaced by a new message icon. Legal. Urgent. The subject line was blunt enough to feel deliberate. The lockout happened without drama. One moment the app opened like it always had, the next it didn't. A banner replaced the dashboard, polite and firm, explaining that access was temporarily restricted pending verification. Another notification followed from my bank. Similar language, same tone. Nothing accused me of wrongdoing. Everything suggested patience. That patience had a price. An email from the compliance team arrived shortly after, listing documents they needed and reminding me that reviews could take time. My login credentials stopped working across the board. Years of work reduced to read-only status. By noon, the family company announced layoffs. 2 people, both names familiar. One of them texted me directly. We didn't have a choice, she wrote. I'm sorry. There was no question in it, no blame, just exhaustion. The message sat there unanswered while another alert chimed from my phone. A group email circulated that afternoon, sent by my mother and addressed to everyone. She framed it as concern, then moved quickly to urgency. The family business was at risk. Outside interference was causing instability. Some decisions had to be centralized for everyone's good. My name appeared once. Emily's actions, she wrote, were threatening the survival of what we'd all built together. Replies followed almost immediately. Supportive, relieved, people thanking her for stepping in. The tone was familiar, like watching a room lean toward the person who sounded the most confident. Marcus called as I stared at the screen. This is the pattern, he said. She creates a crisis, then positions herself as the only fix. Nothing he said offered an exit. It just explained the shape of the trap. Later that evening, I drove past my mother's house. The lights were on. Cars filled the driveway. Voices carried through the open windows. A gathering I hadn't been invited to. The security system company finally returned my call. The technician sounded bored. Yes, the unit was manually disabled, he said. Power source was cut from inside the house. No malfunction, no accident, just a switch flipped at the right time. The confirmation closed a door I'd been hoping stayed open. Back home, the apartment felt smaller. Notifications stacked again. Legal updates, requests, silence where answers should have been. A draft email sat open on my laptop addressed to everyone. It explained timelines, clarified facts, pointed out discrepancies. It was thorough and calm and completely useless. Each sentence assumed someone wanted to understand. Marcus texted once more. Stop reacting, he wrote. You're playing her tempo. The words landed harder than anything else that day. The draft stayed open for a few more minutes. Then the cursor moved. Select all, delete. A new folder appeared on the desktop, named with the date. Clean, empty, waiting. Files moved into it one by one. Documents, messages, screenshots. No explanations attached, just records. Another email arrived from the company lawyer, reminding me of potential consequences if disruptions continued. The phrasing was careful, almost sympathetic. I closed it without replying. The apartment was too orderly for how little money was moving through it. Bills sat in a neat stack on the counter, each one already opened, amounts circled. The bank notification stayed pinned at the top of my phone, still using the word temporary like it meant something. Rent, insurance, groceries, everything had a date. None of it cared about context. Dinner was toast. Not as a statement, just because it was there. The mistake wasn't hard to name anymore. It had never been one big decision. It was a pattern built from small ones that felt reasonable at the time. Staying quiet because it seemed mature, signing quickly because the request came from my mother and she was standing right there, stepping back because it felt easier than pushing. Each choice shaved off a little leverage. None of them felt dangerous until they stacked. What sat in front of me wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a system that worked because everyone played their assigned role. The fixer, the peacemaker, the difficult one. Silence kept it running. Reaction fed it. Another email arrived from the bank. Still polite, still vague. Verification ongoing. Thank you for your patience. Marcus's name lit up my phone a few minutes later. No call, just a file attachment and a short message. Thought you should see this. The document took a second to load. A corporate registry page, an LLC name I recognized before I finished reading it. It was mine. Not personally, structurally. An entity I'd set up 2 years earlier for a side investment, parked and quiet, designed to keep distance between decisions and family. I'd almost forgotten about it because it had done exactly what it was meant to do. The paused contract, the replacement investor, the paper trail Marcus had flagged early. It all pointed back there. The realization didn't feel triumphant. It felt clarifying. The price showed up immediately. Continuing meant accepting that there would be no version of this where relationships stayed intact. The path forward didn't include reconciliation dinners or careful wording. It ended with distance, permanent or close enough to count. The phone buzzed again. A relative asking if I'd reconsidered. A reminder that my mother was doing her best. The message stayed unread. Logging into the investment system took longer than it used to. Extra steps, extra verification. Once access cleared, the dashboard filled in, familiar and unchanged. Ownership percentages, voting rights, meeting history. Everything that had been blocked elsewhere worked here. A calendar notification appeared automatically. Closed session, restricted attendance. My name listed under final authority. The cursor hovered over the confirmation button. Outside, a car alarm chirped once and stopped. The apartment stayed still, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Marcus sent one last text. No pressure, just clarity. That was the closest thing to comfort I'd gotten all week. The meeting details expanded on the screen. Time, participants, agenda, all business, no room for feelings. Exactly the kind of structure my family respected when it didn't involve them. The folder on my desktop remained open in the background, full now. Documents labeled with dates instead of explanations. Nothing emotional, everything traceable. The bank notice chimed again, reminding me I had 48 hours left. The family meeting invite stayed unanswered. Both waited. One click confirmed attendance. Another verified voting rights. A summary window popped up, asking me to review authority levels one last time. The confirmation email arrived immediately. Meeting scheduled. The documents arrived in my inbox almost casually. Not a warning, not a call. Just a PDF with a subject line that suggested routine. Family legal update. I opened it slowly, expecting bureaucracy, instead finding a map of years of manipulation. Signatures, dates, authority transfers, all orchestrated carefully, linking not just me but several accounts, several roles across family ventures. The envelope from the bank back at the Christmas dinner came back into focus. It wasn't an anomaly. It was a planned step, one in a chain leading toward control. I had thought it was random, misfiled, or just bad timing. Every tiny detail now pointed to deliberate positioning. And the words my mother had used that night, definitely signed before the new year, were reassurance, a calm statement to the family that everything was under control, even as risk loomed over them. Nothing had been accidental. I ran a check on the power of attorney documents. My signature appeared on multiple forms, some scanned copies from years prior, each one marked in ways that ensured my consent could be cited, questioned, or reinforced whenever needed. Linda had cultivated this over time. The reach wasn't about money. It was about influence, the kind that made people dependent, the kind that let her define reality for anyone who mattered. An email pinged. My mother's lawyer had sent a notice confirming that all the forms I had signed retained full legal effect. No debate, no ambiguity. The phrasing was polite, almost considerate, but it shut the door on immediate action. My leverage had diminished. It wasn't gone entirely, but it was constrained. A witness I'd counted on had changed their statement under pressure from the rest of the family. Even routine checks that I thought would support me were delayed or blocked. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of it, though not panic. Recognition, not emotion. This was a structural problem, not a dramatic failure. Being upset wouldn't fix anything. Being reactive might make things worse. What mattered now was understanding the system, not lamenting its rules. There was a notification from my investment contact, subtle but urgent. The meeting originally scheduled for midweek had been moved forward. The partner wanted to decide before any further complications arose. The timing was inconvenient, yes, but it gave clarity about the immediate window for action. I noted the shift, the narrow margin to position myself. Every day, every hour, had become a tool. The decision to act had to be precise. I cross-referenced the LLC I had established 2 years ago with the updated contract and ownership structures. Names matched. Entities lined up. My authority within the entity was complete. I could direct decisions legally, strategically, and invisibly. Nothing was public yet. Nothing needed public confirmation yet. The realization wasn't comforting, but it was sharp and clean. Everything hinged on timing and sequence. A brief call with Marcus confirmed the patterns I suspected. He didn't offer reassurance or moral support, only observation. "This isn't personal," he said. "It's a series of moves, and they've been playing this for years." The phrases landed with the weight of cold practicality. They weren't dramatic. They were descriptive. And they were right. I organized the files, labeling carefully. Each one tracked, each one dated. Evidence didn't need commentary. Accuracy was protection. Accuracy was leverage. The notifications kept coming, some from the family lawyer, some from internal systems. They suggested oversight, compliance, concern. In reality, they were pressure points. Each one tested response time and resolve. I cataloged them, made notes, and closed the messages without reply. The calendar alert blinked. New time, new context, restricted access, private session. I confirmed the event. The meeting room, attendance list, agenda, everything appeared in a sequence I could influence. The cursor hovered over options I could select, changes I could make, authority I could exercise. It was a structure with edges I understood now. Outside, evening moved forward. Inside, decisions stacked against the system my mother had constructed. I didn't feel fear, just recognition. The stakes were clear. The margin for error was narrow. Every move counted. Another email arrived from the investment partner, a note confirming updated status, a reminder that the final decision was approaching sooner than expected. I let it load while reviewing all the permissions I controlled. Every checkbox, every line of authority, every sign-off option was accounted for. The conference room smelled faintly of polished wood and reheated coffee. Lawyers sat on one side, bank representatives on the other. A few minor shareholders lined up along the far wall. I placed my laptop at the head of the table and opened the folder labeled with today's date. No explanations, no theatrics, just documents in order. I started with the first piece of evidence, the legal status of the LLC. The name, the registration, the authorized signatory. Everything confirmed what I already knew. "Emily, that's just formality," my mother said quickly, leaning forward. "It doesn't prove anything," she added, eyes darting to the bank representative. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence fill the space. Then I opened the next file, a digitally signed resolution for the investment. Every entry timestamped, every signature verified. "This is the executed vote on the contract," I said calmly, pointing to the screen. "All signatures are authentic and final." A murmur passed through the small crowd. Linda tried again. "It's procedural. You didn't have authority to make real decisions." "Authority was granted in the original LLC documents," I replied. The cursor hovered over the approval log. I clicked to expand the full record. Names, timestamps, digital signatures, everything aligned perfectly with the regulations. The final document went up on the projector. A board resolution canceling the contract, approved and confirmed through the authorized channel. The partner hadn't pulled out. I had declined their involvement for the company, within the legal powers granted to me. The truth hit the table before words could even form in the room. Linda's face changed subtly. The certainty she carried into every family conversation, every dinner, every text, cracked. Her hands hovered above the table. She opened her mouth, hesitated, closed it again. A soft chime sounded from my laptop. An email from the system confirmed the status update. "Thank you for your patience." The phrasing was almost absurd in the room, a darkly comic punctuation after years of careful control. It went unnoticed by everyone else, but I caught it, and a small smirk almost escaped. Bank representatives shifted, glancing at each other. One cleared his throat. "Without the authorized vote, we can't proceed with funding support." The air thickened. Shareholders whispered, some jotting notes, others leaning toward each other. Linda tried to speak again, but the words stumbled in her throat. Her role as orchestrator, the one who'd maneuvered, controlled, and reassured the family for years, was exposed in front of everyone. A lawyer leaned back, arms crossed, tapping his pen. "All legal documents have been verified. The vote is binding. There is no appeal without proper cause." I clicked the last file, confirming the board's vote to cancel the contract. The system recorded every action, the digital signatures, the timestamps, the approvals. They couldn't be denied, altered, or erased. The room understood it. Linda understood it. I didn't need to speak any louder. No one applauded. No one made a scene. Just the weight of the outcome settling over the table. Another email from the system arrived simultaneously. Transaction completed. Thank you for your patience. Its dry tone carried the black humor I recognized from before, the absurdity of polite systems affirming decisions that devastated pride and control. A minor shareholder whispered, shaking his head, "Guess the game's over." Linda leaned back, trying to compose herself, but the subtle tremor in her hands betrayed every careful argument she had prepared. Her influence, meticulously built over years, collapsed into a moment of quiet clarity for everyone watching. The bank representative stood, closing his folder. "We'll discontinue financial support for this contract effective immediately." The word discontinuing echoed in the room, final, deliberate. The room went still. The sense of anticipation, the calculated pauses, the years of manipulation, all of it landed in a single, undeniable outcome. I leaned back, fingers resting lightly on the laptop. The screen showed all approvals, cancellations, and legal verifications in precise order. Linda's gaze never left the files. My cursor blinked. The next steps would proceed, and every record of the process was secure. Outside the window, city lights flickered, indifferent. Inside, the meeting hung suspended, a cage door latched with facts, signatures, and timestamps. The bank had spoken, funding withdrawn, control shifted. The air pressed against everyone present as though the room itself understood the change. The cursor hovered, waiting for final confirmation of distribution reports, as whispers ran quietly along the back wall. The door closed behind an assistant bringing the final printouts. Everyone looked at the table, then at each other. The tension lingered, thick, settled, and undeniable. The filing notification arrived early in the morning. The family company had officially submitted for a controlled bankruptcy. Not dramatic, no media, no spectacle, just legal confirmation. The email landed in my inbox with a subject line that read like a report, dry and factual, almost polite. I saved it immediately into a new folder labeled Resolved, letting the humor of formality wash over me as if the system itself knew the absurdity of the situation. Calls that once came in regularly from my mother stopped arriving with urgency. Messages went unanswered for hours. Linda's tone, usually commanding and deliberate, had lost its authority. The subtle weight she carried in every family decision seemed suspended, evaporated. People adjusted quietly. The family didn't explode, didn't argue, they simply withdrew. Each adult tended to their own obligations, the previous choreography of control falling apart without ceremony. A year passed. Holidays came and went. Christmas approached again, and I didn't step through the familiar doors. I stayed home, watching other routines move forward on schedules that no longer included me. My phone buzzed once with a short note. A card from my mother. Physical mail, neat and restrained. Sorry for the way things went. Hope you're well. No explanations, no justification, no attempt to draw me back. I left it on the counter, letting it sit with the others, unopened. If forgiveness was offered, it wasn't verbal. There was no negotiation, no emotional reconciliation. I kept the distance I had carved. A few connections remained, minimal and transactional, but the boundaries were clear. Returning to the past version of that family dynamic wasn't an option, and I didn't want it to be. The apartment was calm. I updated my emergency contacts, replacing old numbers that belonged to family members with numbers I trusted fully. Access to shared accounts was revoked completely. Every link I had held to the previous system closed and archived. The sense of control returned incrementally with each action. Paperwork filed, passwords changed, notifications muted. The details were small, mundane, but vital. An email from the legal system of the investment partner arrived mid-afternoon. Automated confirmation. They had recorded the corporate actions, final and binding. The dry phrasing amused me in a dark way. Thank you for your patience. It felt like a punchline written for a play I had been acting in without ever getting lines. I chuckled briefly, alone, the sound bouncing off the walls in a room that no longer held anyone else's authority. The keys to my mother's house sat on the counter, polished and familiar, a symbol of the access I no longer needed. I picked them up and slid them into a manila envelope, careful to include only the essentials. The weight of years of inherited expectations pressed lightly in my hand. I pushed the envelope into the top drawer of my filing cabinet, the motion deliberate, methodical. The drawer closed with a small click. The phone lay nearby, dark, still blinking after a recent notification. I didn't check it. The screen went completely black as the battery drained, leaving only the envelope in the drawer and the quiet confirmation of the night settling over the apartment. Every step that had been necessary to disentangle myself had been executed. Every connection severed cleanly, legally, and beyond argument. I walked to the kitchen, poured a cup of tea, and let it steep. The silence didn't demand attention. The decision to maintain distance was no longer something I had to fight for. It was present, established, and unquestioned. The clutter of the past, the control, the micromanaging hands that had guided every family step for so long were gone from my immediate reality. Outside, city lights flickered in their predictable pattern. Inside, my apartment held only what I chose. The envelope rested, the files were organized, the phone was off. A year of consequences had landed exactly as they would, neat and precise. No argument remained, no explanation was needed. Just a quiet settlement of accounts, closed, recorded, and untouched. While the night carried on, the glow of the laptop faded as I shut it down. Notifications silenced, the screen dark, the drawer closed, the envelope settled. And in that final moment, as the phone's screen went completely black, the work was done. The separation was total, the distance permanent. The room was still.